And the more insulin resistant you are, the more likely you are to store fat.
What's up? 筋肉翻訳です。さあ今日はストレスのせいででかくならない、脂肪が落ちないその理由見ていきましょう。以前からなんとなくストレスは筋肥大の大敵と聞いたことはあるかもしれません。でも体脂肪燃焼にも影響があるっていうことは知っていましたか？今回はその両方のことについてクリスチャンさんが話をしてくれています。難しい言い回しをしてから分かりやすく解説をしてくれているので、ストレスと筋肉の関係性を理解していきましょう。どうぞ。
Regardless if your goal is to build muscle, get stronger, or get leaner, I think that the limiting factor for most individuals remains the same, and that is how they manage stress. Because if you don't manage stress properly, either in your lifestyle or in your training by using a training program that doesn't fit your nature, your neurological profile, for example, doing too much volume, what happens is that you will overproduce the hormone called cortisol. Now, that has many important drawbacks on your body composition. First of all, cortisol itself is anti-anabolic or also catabolic. So basically, if cortisol is always elevated, it increases protein breakdown. And you don't want that, because if you break down more protein than you build, you actually have a negative balance and you lose muscle tissue. So that, of course, drastically reduces how much muscle you can build. Now, from a body composition standpoint, there's also the impact on body fat percentage. Now, cortisol is technically a mobilization hormone, meaning that in theory, it's good for losing fat, because one of its purpose is to take the energy that is stored, either body fat, glycogen stores, or protein, which is why you can lose muscle if you produce too much cortisol, and you mobilize that to make fuel. So in theory, elevating cortisol will make you leaner, and it might do so if it only is increased during the training and then goes down for the rest of the day. Or initially, if it's always high, like for a very stressful situation in your life, for a short period, you might actually lose fat. But eventually, you start to gain fat. Why is that? Well, for several reasons. First, well, cortisol, when it's always elevated in the long run, constantly high because you have a very stressful lifestyle, well, it reduces the conversion of the T4 thyroid hormone, which is inactive, into the active T3 thyroid hormone. So basically what that means is that if cortisol is always high, your T3, the hormone regulating how much calories you burn on a daily basis, will go down. So your metabolic rate, how much fuel you burn on a daily basis, will go down. So it's harder to lose fat and easier to pile it up. So that's the first thing. The second thing is cortisol being a mobilization hormone. It breaks down stored glycogen and releases it into the bloodstream. Now, that's good when you're training, because that gives you fuel. But if it's always high because you're stressed because of your life, because of your job, and you're not physically active while you're being stressed, what happens is you are releasing that glycogen into your bloodstream, but you are not utilizing it for fuel. So the result is that you have to release insulin to lower blood sugar level. So in other words, if cortisol is always high because you're stressed and you're not active while it happens, you are constantly releasing insulin and you become insulin resistant. And the more insulin resistant you are, the more likely you are to store fat, and the harder it is to mobilize fat for fuel. So the more insulin resistant you are, the fatter you get. So these are two ways that cortisol slow down fat loss or increase fat gain. It also decreases muscle mass. And from a normal standpoint, cortisol is created from the same raw material as testosterone and estrogen, as well as other hormones. So basically what that means is that the more cortisol you produce, the less raw material you have available to produce testosterone and estrogen. So that's why athletes who are overtrained or overstressed because of big competitions coming up, the first symptom is a drastic drop in libido because their sex hormone goes down. So obviously you feel like crap, but these hormones, testosterone and estrogen, are also anabolic. They help build muscle. Testosterone, we all know why. That's why athletes inject testosterone when they are using steroids, for example. But estrogen is very anabolic in women because it increases IGF-1 production, which is their pathway to increase protein synthesis. So these are the reasons why stress management, lowering cortisol during the day, except for a training session, is key to changing the way your body looks.
さあ、いかがでしたでしょうか。ストレスによってコルチゾールが出る。コルチゾールによって代謝率が下がる。血中にグリコーゲンが放出されて脂肪が使われにくくなる。コルチゾールがたくさん作られることで性ホルモンの量が減る。筋合成が後回し、もしくは優位ではなくなる。まとめてもこんなに盛りだくさんな内容でした。ストレスという一つのことからこんなにもたくさん広がっていくんですね。でかい人の中にはおおらかな人が多かったり、細かいことを気にしない人が多いのはこういった理由もあるかもしれませんね。みんなはどんな意識をしてストレスをためないよう意識していますか？コメント欄で教えてください。僕は他人に期待をしない、判断を委ねない、何かの原因を人任せにしない、感謝を忘れない、ごめんねよりもありがとうを多くする、こんなことを日々心がけています。最後まで見ていただいてありがとうございます。感想や動画のリクエスト、チャンネル登録お待ちしてます。ではまた。
I won't look back when you're around. I won't think twice when you're gone. Don't hesitate to call me back. 'Cause I won't